Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April 3rd, 2024 Utility Advisory Commission meeting. And we'll call the meeting to order, starting to my left.
Commissioner Motter, present.
Greg Scharf, present.
Bob Phillips, present.
Commissioner Forcell, present.
And Commissioner Siegel, present as well. There are no changes to the agenda, so we will move on to public comment. Are there any comments from the public on an item not on the agenda?
This is Janelle Camion, Program Assistant. And if anyone from the public would like to speak on something not agendized, please raise your hand or dial *9 on your phone. There's one hand raised on Zoom as well as one person in person who'd like to speak. We'll start with Zoom. John Kelly, you may speak.
Thank you very much, commissioners. I'll be very brief. I'm trying to figure out what the correct procedure is to encourage you to put on a future agenda an item that would allow people who have ADUs to obtain separate electrical and water service for the ADUs that they may be building or that they already have. Director Batchelor was kind enough to speak to me at a recent town hall meeting. I discussed this with him briefly. I've also discussed this idea with Director Late, and I think it's a great idea. I really urge you to consider it. And just very briefly, some of the reasons for it are that there are important costs that would be available to be paid directly by occupants of an ADU if it were rented out. I think this would encourage responsibility and hopefully better use of scarce resources that we'll have, especially in the future, namely electricity and water. And it would also, I think, impart a certain amount of additional dignity to people living in ADUs. They would be treated more as first-class customers of the City of Palo Alto Utilities. And then very significantly, it would help address one of the problems that's encountered frequently in the construction of ADUs, which is that many homes in Palo Alto, many primary dwellings have, for example, 200 amp service. And especially as we embark upon greater electrification of homes throughout Palo Alto, that available electrical load is oftentimes not sufficient to also support the marginal electrical load of a fully electric ADU. And so you get the situation where people have 200 amp services, and if they're going to put on an ADU, they may have to install in their homes, for example, go up to a 400 amp service. The beauty of having a separate service for utilities from the perspective of the City of Palo Alto Utilities is it allows for an incremental addition of perhaps 50 amps, maybe 75 amps or 100 amps, rather than making the jump from a 200 amp service at one location to a 400 amp service. And thus we would get greater utilization out of our existing utilities infrastructure. And simultaneously, this is a benefit for the homeowner or the other property owner that's trying to build the ADU, because you don't have the sometimes enormous costs associated with a 400 amp upgrade. There's something that I like to refer to as a loser lottery under current policies, by which applicants who are building ADUs sometimes have to pay for, I'm not sure about the exact terminology, but it's essentially a transformer upgrade or other electrical upgrade to the distribution system, which can cost tens of thousands of dollars. So by allowing for separate service for ADUs, you would remove some of the impediments to housing production in Palo Alto, which I think would help meet the city's housing goals. You'd be addressing sustainability issues more responsibly by making sure that those who live in a separate dwelling are responsible for their own water and electrical service directly. You would eliminate problems that sometimes occur when owners of a home are trying to seek reimbursement for utility services if they want the people they might be renting the ADU out to pay for those utility services. And I think you would also get better utilization out of your existing electrical plant. So I don't know how to get this on the agenda. If anyone's interested, I'd be I'd very much like to speak with individual commissioners about this, and I hope that you would also encourage Director Batchelor and his team to consider this directly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. And we have one other speaker.
Yes. Lisa Madden, you may, Lisa Madden, we're ready for your public comment.
Can I get the card that I wrote the notes on? Thank you so much. I was looking over some of the electrical work that was already completed. And I know this one, AB 1944 is like an already paid, it's already done. I just wanted to say that I read over it and it looks great. And I thought it could be like a good example for the other things in that section that were, I guess, up in the air. Section 549, 54.3. And that was it. I believe it's under a couple of new energy terms that I hadn't really associated with, like a welfare and institutions code. And I found it interesting that I utilized them to get up here and comment on it. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it, Janelle.
Are there any other public comments? Great. So we will move on to the approval of the minutes. We have two sets of minutes to approve. So we'll start with the March 6, 2024 minutes. Are there any comments or changes to those minutes?
I move we approve.
I think we can, okay, we'll go down and vote. Approve.
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 And I approve as well. So we can then move on to the March 14th minutes. And are there any comments or changes to those minutes? We have a motion to approve those.
Second.
Okay, we'll go. Approve.
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 I try to usually not vote when I wasn't there, but I think we need do we need my
No.
vote tonight? Great, then I'm going to just abstain from voting.
And I'll approve. So it passes still. Great, thanks for that. And we will move on to the director report now.
Thank you, Chair Siegel. Evening, Commissioners. So first of all, just to back up real quick on the agendas and the changes. Before you on the dais, you'll actually see some new slides for item number 5 tonight. There was some conversations with some of you with staff. And so we thought that the comments were important enough that we decided that we would add that into the conversation tonight, that we could share it with everybody. And then after tonight, we will make the change and we'll put this change onto the website so that the community would be able to see these extra slides that you have in front of you tonight. So, so a short, small change on the agenda portion that you'll be able to see the entire slide when Mr. Stack comes on later and talks about the Amoresco contract. Just a little bit, just to keep you informed a little bit and also to the community side, is that April 1st was an April 1st full joke, but it was on April 1st, San Francisco Public Utilities began a pipeline inspection project along El Camino at California Ave. They're inspecting one of the drinking water transmission pipelines and the water delivery reliability and flushing the water from the pipe. 2 lanes of traffic on El Camino will be from Cambria Ave to California Ave. And they're going to close 2 of those lanes down to accommodate this work. Vehicle and pedestrian crossings at California Ave and El Camino intersection may be restricted. There's going to be large volumes of water that they will be pushing through as they are inspecting these pipes. The project is supposed to go from April 1st through April 8th. They will be working around the clock. It's going to be 24-hour timeframe on this to be able to get this done, since it is on El Camino. As all of us know, that's very busy during that period of time. So we have adjusted our water system ourselves because we will not be getting any water from them in that section. So we have some workarounds and we have some changes that we made. So we've been, for the last 2 to 3 weeks, we've actually been putting the system into that mode before the water was shut off, just to test it, to make sure that the right pressures, that we weren't overpressuring or underpressuring in those areas, and cross our fingers and everything will hold for that period of time. So it is for 8 days that will be coming. And like I said, it started on April 1st, and it'll be complete on April 8th. Second thing is disbursements of funds to the utility customers from the green case. On March 12th, the city began posting refunds to the gas utilities customers who were members of the green case in accordance with the court approval. The pending of the September 23rd of 15 through June 30th of 22 will receive a credit on their utility bill. Those credits will appear on the customer's next billing utilities in March 12th through April 13th, depending on when their billing cycle is. And during that evaluation time period, active customers will receive the refund. And then we are also reaching out to customers that were in that time frame. We're working with the disbursement company that is dispersing these funds for us on looking at move outs, or if people that have maybe moved to a different location or maybe somewhere else in the city at that point. So we're doing reach outs for that portion of it. So these checks will be through for March 25 and 26. So there's 3 payments of this. About $156 for each customer that was in the during the green case and during that period of time. So it'll be a total of 156 3 times that customers will be receiving. Just real quick on the hydro update. After recent storms, levels northern and central California as of March 28th are above average for the time of the year, and the snowpack levels are actually slightly above that. So we're seeing somewhere the city hydro resources projected to be produced about 108% of the long-term average of output for the fiscal year. Excuse me, and 109 for the long-term average levels through 25. Suspension. So on February 26th, council suspended the reinforcement of all the electric building requirements for new building sustainable remodels. City staff has been working on a new set of local energy reach codes that has been established, and strategically energy efficient standards of all electric building regardless requirements of Title 24. So I think I brought this up before as we talked about that Berkeley lost their case and at the Ninth Circuit. And they had no, well, Berkeley had decided that they didn't want to take it to the Supreme Court. So they upheld that. So we actually had to pull back on our requirement for no gas services, and all new homes had to be electric. So we rescinded that and we suspended that. We are going to council before their break with a new model that we've been modeling that will look at more higher efficiency appliances. And then we are going to change our reach code during that period of time. Let's see, EV charger rebates. As the end of March, a total of 29 sites have received rebates for EV chargers. Recently highlighted in the program includes Stanford Health Care, Children's Hospital, a school, and 3 condominiums. And then the EV discount campaign, the city's partnership to a nonprofit Cool and Earth Ride and Drive, is limited time campaign was extended from February to March, providing residents with discount savings up to $11,500 on selected EVs. Which was Audi, Ford, Hyundai, and Kia. The limited time used discount campaign is currently in the works and should be available sometime in April or May. So we're trying to look at another way that we can try to put some rebates out there. So it'll be coming later this month or next month during that time. Some upcoming events to think about is April 4th. Pardon me. Water Conservation Showcase. It's a water conservation showcase, and it is waterconservationshowcase.com. April 13th, tips and tricks for successful turf conversions. And then on April 21st, again, is Earth Day festivals. And then also too is that on May 4th, if any of you are interested to go to the Mayfest parade, we are going to have a couple tables. If you're more than willing to stop by and wanted to kind of talk to some of the community at that period of time, you're more than welcome to stop at the table and host with our staff if you'd like. But again, that's going to be on May 4th at the Mayfest event. And with that, that concludes my report. Can I answer any questions?
I had one question. I did see that Berkeley retracted its law. Is that what we've done? We've pulled it, or have we not done that? We're going to amend it?
So we didn't amend it. We decided that what we needed to do was actually suspend it. So we suspended our reach code. We followed the same as Berkeley, but as Berkeley failed at that point, we decided to rescind it. And we are working hard, working with utilities, Public Works, and the Development Center. We're working all together on coming up with a new standard portion that we'll be able to bring back, like I said before, the council goes on break, and bring a report to them about, there are other cities, San Jose, St. Louis Obispo, a couple other cities that have gone down a different path than what we went with Berkeley. And they went to this higher efficiency standards and looking at the models of that. And so we're thinking this might be the way that we should go. So there'll be more to come by June of coming year here.
About the green case refund, how much was that in total and where did that money come from? I assume it came from the City of Palo Alto General Fund, not from any of the utility funds, but the rebate is simply a mechanism to compensate?
Yes, so that is coming from the general fund, and Kylie.
Dean, I can speak to,
How much? I know, but how much?
it's about 17 million, Dean.
17. Thank you. Thank you both. So
Thank you.
17 mil.
Any other questions? Great, thank you. We'll now turn to new business, and item 3 is to appoint a new chair and vice chair of the UAC. So we'll start with the chair, and do we have any nominations for anyone to serve as chair?
I would like to nominate Commissioner Scharf.
I'll second that.
Can Commissioner Scharf, or Vice Chair Scharf, confirm that he is willing to take on this role at this time?
Yes, I'd be honored to take on the role at this time.
Great, any other nominations, or should we take a vote on Vice Chair Scharf becoming chair? I think we'll vote. We'll start here.
I vote in favor.
Yes.
I vote yes.
I vote yes.
And I vote yes as well. And so it's my honor now to hand over the meeting and the chair to Chair Scharf, and he will take over the meeting from now. Congratulations.
I just wanted to thank all of you for the vote and for, investing in me this role. I guess I can stay here. I guess I can stay here. Yes, pass the gavel, because we use the gavel all the time.
You still don't ever need to use it. There you go.
Exactly. All right, so our next order of business then is a vice chair. Do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Motter.
I will second that.
I'd like to ask Commissioner Mauder if she's willing to take on the role of vice chair.
I would be honored to take on the role of vice chair.
All right, let's take a vote starting down there.
I vote in favor.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
And I vote yes as well. Congratulations.
thank you.
All right. That brings us on to new business, I believe. Let's see. Minutes, we did that. Yes. Item number 4, continuation of staff's request for the Utility Advisory Commission's recommendation for City Council to approve the Phase 4 cross-border verification program.
I'll ask for public comments. This is Janelle Camion, Program Assistant. If anyone from the public would like to speak on item number 4, please raise your hand or dial *9 on your phone.
Do we have any public comments?
No hands raised.
Okay. Seeing no public comments, do we have a staff report?
For you, Chair Scharf. So thank you very much for this. This is an item that we are bringing back to you from last year. We went back and we actually went back and looked at some analysis. We think that we have a better understanding about what the commission was looking for at the time. And tonight we're going to present and ask for recommendation to move this towards council approval at this point on this cross board. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron Perkins, who is our senior engineer.
All right, thank you. So this is, like Dean had mentioned, this is a continuation for our discussions in December regarding the remaining 966 laterals to be inspected for the cross-bore program. Starting off on the photo or image you see here, there's a layout 1, layout 2. And just to kind of give some context on what we discussed last time, kind of felt it would be better for us to kind of lay this foundation out before we went deeper into the presentation on the quantities and everything. So as you can see from, I know it's a lot, but from the layout here, you've got the residential building. You have the sewer main and gas main with the sewer laterals and gas services on property. Couple of things to note here. You can see the dashed yellow line, which is an unknown private sewer configuration. So these can vary in how they get routed from the sewer lateral to the house. But this is just an assumption that it goes straight to the house. There's a couple of distances, distance between gas and sewer. That will play a factor into what how we did our analysis and determining which ones to prioritize. The other major components on here are on the left, layout 1, you'll see that the meter is located at the building. And so that is a gas service. It's a city gas service that goes onto private property. It also has an EFV, which if you remember last time is an excess flow valve, which is a kind of a safety valve in there. If it senses a certain amount of flow over it, it automatically shuts for a safety feature. On the right, layout 2, the gas service particularly, you'll see that there's a meter located at the curb. This is what we consider a curb meter, and you will see that on some of the tables. And then as well as you'll see a manual shutoff valve, which is a valve in the street that has to be closed manually. So it doesn't automatically trigger like that EFV. So that's just kind of a general layout. Obviously with the curb meter located at the curb, You know, it's pretty much in line with our city cleanout and what the city has as far as substructure maps for our utilities. The gas meter on property, you can see it runs onto private property, which we don't typically have the sewer as-built for that. Next slide. I won't read all these. I'm sure you've already read them. But basically, these were kind of the 7 points that we pulled out from our discussion in December of what you guys have requested us to kind of bring back and answer for additional information. So we've broken it out that way, 7 points. Okay, so first one, how was the cross-bore inspection completed in the field? So we kind of put a little bit of animation in this so you can see kind of what we're dealing with in the field. This is actual inspection of a cross-bore we actually did find at a house on Churchill. But basically, first thing you'll see here is this is what we know. We know where the sewer main is in the street. We know where the gas main is in the street. We know where the sewer lateral is that feeds the property, the city clean out, and then we'll also know where the gas service is located with the meter up at the property. Meter up at the property is majority of the time is how these are installed. There's very few that are actually at the curb. In this, you'll also see that there's a private clean out at the corner of the residential building. So in making a couple assumptions, because we don't have as-built for private lines, we assume that the private clean out connects to the city clean out. So in clearing this for a cross-bore inspection, we would start at the private clean out because it is at the limit of the gas service, and we would use a push camera to push, and knowing this one actually came out. It didn't go directly to the city clean out. It actually came out a distance, 10 feet, and actually went to a Y. In doing that, we could not get past that Y for the inspection to go out towards the city lateral. So we had to come over to the sewer manhole in the street, and we had to actually launch a lateral launch camera down the main, and then eventually up the lateral to find that it turns. And we got past that point, but because there's a branch going towards the gas service, it required more inspection to clear this property. And as we went further up the lateral, we could not proceed due to debris. And so because we couldn't clear it, we knew it crossed, we had to excavate it at that location. And subsequently discovered a cross-bore at that location. And so this was fixed right away. And you know, this was identified because it was a PE line that had been horizontal directionally drilled and required inspection. So that is kind of how we approach it. Typically, we will do the push camera first. If we can't get a successful inspection that way, we will utilize lateral launching and a combination of excavating to be able to clear the property. So going to item 2, I believe this came as far as the number of reportable incidents. So we went back, searched the federal government's website to locate all the reportable incidents related to a cross-bore. And there was 7 reportable incidents over the last 20 years. One being as early as March of 2023. But as you can see, they range from across the nation, different states. Not all of them lead to deaths, some do. Not all of them lead in injuries, some do, but typically all of them are going to lead into some property damage as a result of these. There is a little brief summary of each incident. There's a bigger write-up, but we tried to kind of summarize it for you here. So looking at that previous kind of graph, basically 7 reportable incidents over the last 20 years. CPAU has discovered over our cross-border inspection program from phase 1 to now 24, but 4 of these were on main. So there's actually 23 on sewer laterals typically found on property. 0 of these have been reported. We've had 0 reportable incidents. But the idea here is that there's many of these that are discovered every day, weekly, monthly, throughout the nation that don't get reported, that we don't, and there's no statistical numbers for those that we can pull. So it's really unknown on how many have been discovered and repaired without a reportable incident. The third item that came up was, well, if we didn't want to do the cross-border project, what would it cost to install that excess flow valve that you saw at the beginning of the slides? And so we kind of looked at numbers, and 6 out of the 966 laterals, 670 of them already have EFVs. So there's already 670 of them with that excess flow valve installed. 296 do not. So looking at the 296 and factoring in a 4-man crew or 4-person crew, materials, excavation and restoration of the street, it's about $9,000 to install one of these, which looking at the 296 is about 2.6 million. So it's about 190% more to install these than it is to inspect them. In addition, we included reportable incident number 3 in Chicago, Illinois, which actually that service had an EFV on it that was not triggered because there wasn't a sufficient amount of flow over that emergency valve to trigger it. That utility did end up cutting that excess flow valve out, sending it in for analysis, and it was determined that that EFV would have been working properly had there been enough flow. So, you know, the EFVs are not 100%, you know, foolproof. So they normally work when they're supposed to, but they do require a certain amount of flow over it or in a certain loss to trigger. Item number 4, this came up as far as, you know, the cost of property damage in the event we didn't complete it, or in the event we missed one and something were to happen. This is really rough here. Looking at what a normal 3-bedroom home in Palo Alto is, about 1,500 square foot, and an average replacement cost of $450 a square foot brings us to $675,000. Now I know that $450. I mean, we're really just guessing at this point, but just throwing it out there. This also does not include personal property damage, legal action, settlements on injury or fatalities, and public image. Item number 5, this right here came up as far as what is the incremental cost if we are getting from the NASCO coding of the lower sewer lateral and the maintenance benefit we're getting from the cross-border inspection program. So we try to quantify this. Basically 966 laterals is our base bid at estimated about $1,000 in inspection. And then the remaining as needed services are going to be those as needed services for potholing, clean out installation for properties that do not have clean outs, and section replacements for severely clogged laterals, private laterals. As you can see in that one I showed you where we did find the crossbore, like that was an excavation that bid item came out of this portion. So those are as needed for a total project cost of 1.3. Calling around for just NASCO coating of the lower lateral. It was estimated 966 laterals would cost about $500,000 for just performing that NASCO coating inspection for maintenance. So kind of comparing those incremental costs of $852,000 for the program. All right, item number 6. This kind of goes back and to that initial table we talked about in December, but this also will tie into that first slide that you saw, where we break it up between criterias and groups. So you see some of these have group 1, no EFVs, group 2, manual valves, and the diagrams that we've already reviewed in the beginning. So meter location, we talked about that. The building, meaning meter location up at the building on property, and a curb meter being out by the curb. Sewer, main crosses sanitary sewer lateral. So that is where the sewer lateral is going to cross the gas main, because typically we drill those in as well. So that's why we've kind of broken those out here. Now, looking back at our 23 gas crossbores found in sewer laterals, we went back and researched every single one of those and classified them in one of these categories of where they were. And we've provided the totals here to the right. I will say you do see a large increase in residential, commercial, multifamily as opposed to schools, hospitals, and business districts. And that's mainly just for this sheer quantity of residential. It's much, much more common that you're going to have a residential multifamily than you will for a business district. So that kind of plays into the numbers as well. Yeah.
Could you just explain that a little bit on this table? So by putting it in group 1, you said is that the one that's most likely then to have it? But I mean, is that the most riskiest? What are we saying in this table? I mean,
so this table is we needed to group these somehow.
Right.
Okay. And we're trying to group them by kind of a consequence factor. Okay. So group 1, 2, and 3 are schools, hospitals, business districts, high congregation areas, large volumes of people. If we had an issue there, there's a potential that more people would be impacted.
right. So that's what it is. It's not they're more likely to have it
No.
there. This is about impact.
Nope. Yeah, this is trying to divide up the number of inspections and try to group them so we can target which ones need to be done first.
Okay, and 1, because it has no EVFs, right? And 2 has a manual valve, and 3 has with EVF. So that's why that's 1, 2, 3. 'Cause it's
Correct.
safer, right?
Correct. Yeah. So group 1 is, without that, it doesn't have a valve. It doesn't have an excess flow valve on it. Group 2 has a manual valve, but that's a manual valve that has to be turned in the street by a person. So, and then the ones with EFVs are automatically triggered.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Okay, and so the final one, number 7, was basically kind of taking that information and grouping it between distance from sewer lateral to gas service. Looking at our 23 gas crossbores found against sewer laterals, we've kind of grouped them between where they were in proximity to the existing sewer laterals. And you can see that gas services that are closer to sewer laterals are where you see a larger increase in where these are found than something being much further away. And then on the right, the graph on the right, we've categorized these and broke those up. So you can see where the 966 fall from a distance and each group. And so, I mean, our recommendation still is to complete the 966. I think what we would like to do, going back to this previous slide, is to really split these in kind of almost in half, being that the majority of our found crossbores are, 15 feet and less to the sewer lateral. We'd like to focus on basically that on the 966, 15 feet and less. And then for the group one, the services in business districts, schools, hospitals, high congregation areas, and being that those group one has no EFVs, we'd like to focus on that row all the way through greater than 21 to clear those. And that would be, yeah, and that would be year one. So we would look to get that done on a 1-year contract. I think then we could kind of take that data, analyze it, and then bring you back results for consideration for a year 2 project to complete the rest.
Good evening, Commissioners. Matt Zuka, Assistant Director of Utilities, Water, Gas, and Wastewater Engineering. Just for some context, as you're looking at the financial decision for recommendation tonight, I wanted to provide a little bit of information about what the implication of a $676,000 expense is to rates. Effectively, a rule of thumb for the gas utility is every $550,000 is a 1% or a 70-cent impact on a bill. This would be a 1-year, effectively 1 year, hold it for the second year, and these expenses would go away. So this isn't a recurring cost. This is sort of a one-time cost that would nominally be a 1% impact on the rate for the next year, and then would be effectively a 70-cent a month actual financial delta. So just for some additional context in the recommendation.
But that 70 cents is really an average bill.
It's an average bill, correct?
It doesn't really mean anything.
It's on average, it's 70 cents because there's a variable component and a flat component. There's a distribution part of it, and then there's a consumption. So a high consumption bill, yeah, it might vary. Well, the percent would potentially vary as well.
All right, is that the end of the presentation? So we'll come back to the commissioners. Any commissioners have comments, questions? Go ahead.
Thank you for so clearly answering our many questions. We really appreciate it. I had one point of clarification I couldn't find in my past notes. I will admit my packet went missing. I lost a Christmas present somehow. But this is a subset of the total. Can you remind us how many, like there's one more phase after this to wrap up everything, or this is the last phase?
This would be the final phase.
This is the final phase, so there's no more.
966 would be the final
Great.
phase for all the historic
Okay,
laterals to be inspected.
thank you.
Go ahead, Bob.
I guess I'm a little disappointed, given that the motion that was made was asking the staff to return with options to complete fewer than the 966 sewer laterals over the next 2 years based on different risk criteria, including the rates of incidents, reportable incidents, and unreportable incidents. Yes, there's lots of interesting information here, but I did not get that. And I'm wondering why.
Yeah, sure. I can start, or do you want to start? Go ahead. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, it wasn't, we were aware of the request. What we tried to do, and maybe it wasn't clearly articulated, is to break this into the go back one more slide. There we go. When you look at this table, there's no clear cut, in our opinion, way where you can sort of take a group and say this group is no longer a risk. We had some that we didn't, we found some in every column and in every row, with the exception of maybe row 5. And we only have 19 of those left. So what we're proposing is an approach where we take the next year, the next year, and focus on those that are higher risk, which would be the less than 15 feet, and the group 1, which is sort of the higher consequence. So I think we tried to get at that point, not specifically with a, hey, these are the ones that we don't need to do, but this is how we can focus on the priority. If we don't find any, we'd be back here again next year to sort of talk about the second half of this and the other 600,000. But there's no clear, these are the ones that are less likely. We found them sort of at all distances in all locations. And that was the intent of the presentation tonight. Dean, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, if I could just add, I think our strategy was that we did understand that you wanted us to bring us back less. Well, I think what we're asking for is we're doing less. We're asking half. We think that the first half that we're asking you for is, as you can see in the graph or in the chart, that's where the majority of the cross bores that we had found. If the decision is made by this commission if we decide that we're going to move forward with this first half, about 433, well, a little bit more than that. If we allow that to happen in this budget period of time, once we take a look at the results portion of it, I think then it really comes back next year to say yay or nay, or we decide at that period of time it's manageable from an internal standpoint that we can handle it from our own resources. I wish I could tell you tonight that we could handle these 1,000 inspections from an internal standpoint, but I can't tell you that. I don't have the resources in the water gas wastewater group, but I think though that we will have a little bit more opportunities next year to look at doing these. Staff believes that this is important. This is an important part of the inspection portion. If the commission decides that you don't want to look at doing this, we're going to continue on as staff. It may take us 10 years to get them all done. It could take us 8 years. I don't know. I don't know what that timeline is. We haven't looked at what the inspection time is, but we are going to spend manpower to do this internally, or we're going to ask for basically this $676,000 tonight.
So the alternative, although it's not here, would be to approve 1 year. And again, I wish you would come back and said this clearly, both in the presentation and in the staff report, because from my point of view, the motion is quite clear to asking for an alternative. And if your response is there is no alternative, it's all or nothing, that's fine. I guess it's fine. But is the alternative we're being presented with is let's approve 1 year and see how it goes. And I kind of hear two different things. We can't really prioritize, but I've also heard we've prioritized these for the first year.
Yeah.
So is that what I'm hearing?
So we can give a recommendation to council. We could recommend that they not do this at all. We could recommend that they do the groups 1 through 3 and the 11 through 15. I'm just saying you could actually craft something looking at this. So I think we could, recommend whatever we want to recommend. I don't think we have to, do what they're asking.
No, I appreciate that, but I don't feel qualified looking at this table to craft an alternative, these tables to craft an alternative recommendation and what should be looked at. I sort of thought, that's what staff would be doing. That was the purpose of the motion. And again, in my understanding and reading it, given it's not been done, I can't look at these tables and say we should do 1 through 4 and 7 through 19 or that sort of thing. It's not useful.
Yeah, I'll cut that maybe 2 different ways. One is there's sort of a remaining amount of work, which is the overall program. but we approve budgets on a year-by-year basis, right? So we're not asking for approval of a budget of $1.3 million or recommendation of budget. It's the one sort of maybe question is about the program overall. But year one was always going to be the first half of the work. It was always a 2-year project to get done. So, I guess maybe by implication that there would be half of the expense would be in year one and the other half would be in the subsequent year. So when we're asking for a recommendation, really it's on the overall program and how to proceed. And like I said, the data that we've looked at doesn't allow us to dissect the risk and the profile of this any more than what we've presented tonight. We thought about carving off the greater than 21 feet, but ironically, the actual example that you saw in the animation early on in the presentation was a lateral that was greater than 21 feet. So we've actually hit them in that situation, and that's what makes this so difficult, right? That's why we sort of said, I think back in the beginning, that this is kind of a gray area. We did find 4 in the greater than 21 foot category. Is it the least likely? Yeah, it's the least likely, but it's not. It's a non-zero risk, and we recognize that that's not an easy thing. It's also less of a potential consequence, but it's also not a zero consequence. So I think that our proposal is to address in the less than 15, the ones that are physically located together, therefore more likely to be a cross-bore, and also matches sort of the data that we've seen, which is, we see, more in that range, but also to hit group 1, which is high consequence with no flow restriction, and just carve that off as year 1, recognizing that we maybe not have answered the motion directly. I don't think we necessarily have the data to be able to come back with that level of precision. This is more a year 1 to year 2 split. And then if we want to come back and revisit whether or not the remaining 500 should be tackled, if we find none, this is a conversation we're having a year from now with next year's budget. Again, sort of the same approach we've taken all along to get here, which is dealing with the higher risk, higher consequences as we go forward down to the lesser risk and lesser consequence.
Go ahead.
I just had 2 little questions. One is the asterisk that says crossbore during gas main installation. Does that mean you found it during a gas main installation or was created during a gas main installation? And then my second question is if you could explain a little bit more about the routine maintenance costs and how or whether doing the cross-bore inspection eliminates that or defers it or how that plays into it. Because you have this incremental cost because you deduct out the $500K.
Yeah, for the first one, so the asterisks were cross-bore in a sewer lateral during the main installation. So that was a larger diameter pipe. So it wasn't a service pipe that goes on property. It was actually out in the street where the main crosses the lateral.
Oh, but it was when the main was installed, the cross-bore happened.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and we found it later during our inspection, but it was caused when the main was installed.
And so that's CPAW's action rather than a building owner's contractor.
Right, yeah, so most of these, if I go back to, so the top one, the top diagram here where you see the city clean out with the city lateral, how it crosses the gas main, those ones with the asterisk, that was where those were found. So those are still potential, can be damaged because a homeowner's plumber will run a snake cutter down that lateral and it could hit that main.
But I do want to make a clarification. The city crews will install the service up to the building meter. So that is still work, even though it's happening on private property, that is still work that we perform with city crews. So, and then the second question I think you had was related to, if I'm not mistaken, no, not that slide, this slide. And actually this is in response to a question that Commissioner Mauder had about Is there any value that we're getting associated with the work, associated with the inspection work on the sewer side? Because this is sort of a gas-focused cost. And the answer to that is yes, there is captured value. And this is sort of an effort to estimate that, where we now have video documentation of the sewer laterals that we're inspecting for gas purposes. But at the same time as we do that inspection, we go through and we code all of the identified defects for categorization in our sewer program. So we have identified then any sewer defects that we have. So it's a little bit of trying to capture the true incremental cost of just the cross-bore element of it, because there's sort of in the remaining 966, an estimated sort of $500,000 of secondary value, for lack of a better term, that we're capturing, if that answers your question.
Commissioner Forsyth, did you know?
I was trying to do a quick bit of paper and pencil math before chiming in.
I can come back to you if you still
No,
want.
it's all right. I just wanted to say, I appreciate you coming back with all this information. I do feel like it addresses the core of our question. And I appreciate that, thinking of it in two phases is a useful exercise in terms of prioritizing. And, I mean, the presentation would have been nice if it had outlined sort of group one and less than 15 feet. But I hear you on that. And also paper and pencil wise, that does seem to be right about half.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So the last bit I was just going to, at 70 cents a month for 2 years, it's like less than $20 per customer. And then if we assume the captured value, it's going to be, that's the part I didn't do.
Right.
Let's call it $15.
I'd need a spreadsheet.
So sort of based on that, even though, as we discussed at length in the last meeting, we feel like it's probably pretty unlikely that these inspections will yield actual cross-bores, and that especially cross-bores that would have triggered a major event. I'm pretty comfortable personally with the next year's worth of 500 inspections at the cost of less than $10 per customer to get that additional insurance. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you.
Do you want to comment or should I comment? Okay. I really appreciated the work you guys did too. I did. I do share some of the frustrations that my fellow commissioner has over here. But I guess I wanted to say a couple things. First of all, I thought it fascinating that you basically had to go randomly out of state across the United States to find these actual incidents that occurred. When I looked, it was like Massachusetts, Illinois, and it was one. PG&E doesn't do this, which tells me that these are incredibly rare. So I got to say to myself, I think I took more risk coming to the UAC meeting today in my chance of dying or bodily injury than on this cross-bore program. Will reduce risk. Now, I understand that staff's job is to reduce risk. I mean, I get that. But as a citizens panel, the question is, are you reducing risk way below what is reasonable? We don't live in a risk-free world. And so I'm struggling with that. I am not going to vote to do all of these. I think that's an incredible waste of money. I understand, and if I was on the city council, I'd probably direct you not to do all of them. Simply direct it not to do all of them. It seems ridiculous if it took you 80 years that you would do all of them. I wouldn't see that as a worthwhile approach. I guess it's hard to make the call, as Commissioner said, of which ones to do. But what I heard from you guys is where you think the risks are is groups 1, 2, 3, because they're, if there is an incident, it's a huge incident, right? It's a real problem. I got that. And I also got that we're more likely to have a dangerous incident. That's what I was going to ask, if it's below 15 feet. Or was it that it's more likely to be, because I assume it's closer to the house. right? Or am I wrong about that? Is it just we're more likely to have a cross-bore incident? I was unclear if it's a more likely to have a cross-bore incident or if it's more likely to be dangerous on the below 15 feet.
No, so below 15 feet, it's closer to the lateral, so it's more likely to have intersected with
To have
it.
intersect. So it's not a danger issue.
It's not,
purely a-
yeah, no, I mean, any
Okay.
one of these could be dangerous.
Right. So it's purely it's more likely to be there.
Correct. It's a probability.
And the 1 through 3, if I understood this correctly, which I'm not sure I did, the 1 through 3 plus the less than 15, that gets you to about half of it. Was that?
So what we were.
Because you're proposing to do half of it, which is,
What we were proposing was to do the 3 columns of 15 and less, so 0 to 5, 6 to 10,
yep,
11 to 15, and do row number 1 all the way across.
okay, so just row number 1 all the way.
Just row number 1 all the way across.
And that number came up to how many? Because it's 112 plus 111 plus 120 plus 182.
Yeah, so 182, 120, 111, and then 76 and 6, so 84.
Right. So what does that get you as a total?
I-
It was like half of it. And that was $670,000, right?
Yes.
So if I said to you, I only want you to spend $670,000, not just this year, but period. That's it. If that was the motion, that was the recommendation. I mean, council will do whatever they want.
It's
Those are the
497.
497 of them. Are those the ones you would do?
Yep.
Okay. So I think that answers the question. That is staff's recommendation. No, they're alternative recommendation, right? So I think those are the 2 recommendations. That's the recommendation I would support. But I think Commissioner Forcell would support a different recommendation. So I wanted to get a sense from, we can make motions or get it there, but
It's under the, do this for 1 year and come back and see what we found. So it's 1 more year of information gathering. That's how I understood you
Yes,
to mean it,
that's
is
correct.
that we're only talking about 1 year's worth of budget in any case.
so, yeah, but the difference is that we've done cross bores now since, God, I was on the city council when we did cross bore program. So,
2013.
yeah, I think I was mayor when we first started doing the cross bore program. Right? We've done it for a long time. And so we have huge, at the time I was told, I remember that in 2013, it was like, there may be a lot of these. I mean, after looking at them, the data, we don't have a lot of these. We don't. And so whether or not we have 1 more year, and frankly, the ones we're doing, we're probably more likely to find the ones that are more of them. There's going to be less on the other one. So the data will actually skew finding more than you'll skew on the same. So I guess I understand we'll have more data, but I guess I don't find the more data to be helpful in making the decision because it's going to skew the ones we found. And I guess if you find 3 of them or 10 of them, would you recommend continuing to do it? I mean, what would be the number where you would say, nah, it's not worth doing it?
Yeah, no, I think as Dean was mentioning earlier, the first half, that the question is really more around how much of this do we contract out versus how much of this do we do with inside resources and the duration. So the contracting out is just shortening the duration. From our perspective, it's prudent to go through and get all of these and at least video camera them. So if with UAC and council recommendation is not to spend beyond the recommended next year and not to do the second half, then we would figure out a way with our existing crews to internalize that and try to get that done, within the other workload that we have.
And you'd only have 600.
We'd have half of them at that
You'd have
point,
half of them
whatever left.
done. You'd
Yeah,
have most of them.
right. And
There'd
it's
be the
just a
low
matter of how
risk
quickly we
priority
could,
ones.
how long would that take, and how many years to get that remaining work done, in addition to what would be, if we were contracting it out.
And I guess what really strikes me on this, to be honest, is that PG&E doesn't do this. And that we don't see these,
Yeah.
and you guys couldn't.
They do have a
do
cross-border
it.
program.
They have a cross-border program.
I thought they stopped doing it.
They have a cross-border program. They've changed the ways that they've installed services, so they open cut it, so they no longer have to go back and do cross-border inspections. They still have a historic cross-border
So
program.
PG&E, to avoid the risk, has decided to dig open the entire path from the curb to the house
No, that's helpful.
and drop it in, as opposed to running the risk of cross-bore and then the errors that are introduced with video. So while they're going back to the legacy homes. Going forward, they no longer have one. It's because they changed the method of construction.
But do we have a future cross-bore
We
risk
do that
then?
as part of every gas line that goes in. We video the sewer lateral now and have for how long now?
Yeah, so all of our, so everything we do now is post inspected. So we've been doing it in-house, I believe, since 2011 and with contractors since 2001.
Is Santa Clara and Alameda doing cross bores as well?
They don't have a gas utility.
Well, that's right. They don't,
They're under PG&E.
right. We're the only one that does have a gas utility. You're right.
Yeah.
For
up
special.
here.
Do you,
Well, I'm just going to say, I think I appreciate the presentation. I think we've gotten much more focused on the cost benefit analysis. I'm comfortable with the first half of the proposal. Whether we go forward after that, I guess we don't have to decide tonight. So I'm okay.
So say we didn't, you said, Director Batchelor, that this is something that was going to be done anyway, but presumably with internal resources and over a longer period of time. How much longer if we were to internally say the council says, no, we don't want to spend money on this? How much internally would it take to do what could be done in 1 year by the contractors?
I'm sorry, with the contractors or without the contractors? The resources in-house?
Resources in-house.
In-house.
I think I heard you say, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah, no,
that even if we go,
I must misunderstood you. I thought you said with contractors. I'm
sorry
sorry.
about that.
No. It's a good question.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I'll use an example of what we're doing right now on the lead and copper rule. There's a staffing element, and there's an equipment element to it. The staffing element is right now I've diverted 6 people full-time for a year to go scratch water services because we're required to under regulation. But there's not a lot of equipment demand associated with it. We only have 1 CCTV truck that would be doing this, and they have other responsibilities as it is. So while we have some staffing issues, we have some equipment issues, that's probably I'd say a $250,000 vehicle. And so it was going to depend on how much that vehicle is elsewhere and how long it can be dedicated to this. It's hard to
it's like
answer, but it's probably gonna take
5
like
years
5-10
or
years,
10
would be
years.
my guess.
Yeah, I mean, you know, even with 1,000 of these, doing 100 of them a year, which some of these are going to include excavations and additional work on a sewer lateral, I wouldn't expect that this would be completed before 10 years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
any other comments?
I have just one question. I think it's important in that, thank you for looking at the secondary benefits, the wastewater system. I think that should not be discounted. Maintaining wastewater lines is notoriously difficult, and this will support that effort. The one question I had was in terms of the potholing, clean out installation and section replacement estimates. That's a fixed cost or that's a variable cost?
You just pass it. There you go.
So the pothole clean out installation, so those are bid item pricing. And those would be fixed for that year.
Okay, so you're assuming on average 140 of them. If there are fewer, the price goes down.
Well, if there's fewer, then that money just gets returned back to the fund.
Great.
So we wouldn't use it. It's just there just in case we come across these and need to use it.
Okay. And that is funds that are expended on private property, presumably for the benefit of a private homeowner, correct?
Yes, to clear the crossbore. Yep.
Right. I mean, that's not only if there's a crossbore, it's also if you find a failed private sewer line, you're essentially replacing that at for a homeowner's benefit, correct?
Yeah, to complete our inspection,
To
yes.
complete your inspection, yes. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Well, I think I heard somewhat of a consensus of doing at least but we can see doing the group 1 and the 11 to 15. And that would basically be almost what you asked with the exception of the recommendation to come back. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, and that is the request. And then with that recommendation, we'll take it forward for, forward to city council with that in support. And then based on these data, implement this over the next year and be back at some point in the fall or, before the next budget, before the next round of work would be issued and next budget approval.
Well, yeah, I guess I would make the motion a little different, but pretty much that you do. I'll make the motion and see if I get a second. You guys can change it if you want, which is that we do group 1, we do everything below 11, below the 15 feet. So that would be all of that. And that's all we do out of it. You don't come back. You can do the rest of it out of, your own, out of other resources over time.
I just want to make sure I understand. So it's row 1 all the way across.
Yep, row 1 all the way across.
And then 2 through 6, it's the first 3 columns.
Correct.
Okay. I second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. We'll start voting over.
Just one thing. And so just to be clear, you said don't come back for the rest of them?
Right, you can go do them, but don't come back.
Okay. All right.
Look, you guys can obviously come back if you want to, but that's not in the motion. You know what I mean? I mean, you guys
Understood.
are staff, you can clearly come back. I mean, it's just a matter of, that's not the recommendation.
Got it.
We can't make a motion for them not to come back.
Right, exactly.
We can come back.
Or
You can not show
clearly
up.
come back. We're not encouraging you.
Just to clarify, so the motion is to approve.
Do year 1.
Year
Yeah.
1, right?
All right, Commissioner Forsyth.
I'm comfortable with that. I vote yes.
Commissioner Phillips votes yes.
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 And I also vote yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right. Now we're moving on to the next item, which is item number 5, which is recommendation to adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager or their designee to execute an amendment to the power purchase agreement with Amoresco Half Moon Bay LLC for the purchase of up to 60,000 megawatt hours per year of biogas energy over a term of up to 20 years for a total not to exceed amount of 147.2 million. CEQA status, not a project under CEQA guidelines. Okay. Do we have any public comment?
This is Janelle Camion, Program Assistant. If anyone from the public would like to speak on item number 5, please raise your hand or dial *9 on your phone.
Okay, well, then we'll just move on. If they come back, let us know and we'll let them speak.
No hands currently raised.
Right. All right. Do we have a staff?
We do. Sure. Sharp. So as I mentioned earlier, we do have a presentation on this. I'm going to introduce Senior Resource Planner Jim Stack that will be running us through this presentation. Jim?
Yep. Thanks, Dean. Good evening, Chair Scharf and Commissioners. Jim Stack here to talk about the Amoresco Half Moon Bay PPA amendment. Can you all see the screen?
Yes.
I'll
Yes.
assume yes. All right. So we'll talk briefly about the plant in question, the Ox Mountain Landfill Gas to Energy Plant. Then I'll cover the amendment, talk about some of our economic assessment of the amendment and how it'll impact our electric portfolio and the overall cost of it. So the Ox Mountain Landfill Gas to Energy Plant is located just up the road from us in Half Moon Bay. It's a 10.6 megawatt plant. Started operating in 2009, 15 years ago now. The city executed a 20-year power purchase agreement with Ameresco for this facility back in 2005. And under this contract, we receive half of the output from the plant, and Alameda receives the rest. Our share of that amounts to about 44,000 megawatt hours per year, which is about 5.5% of the city's overall electricity consumption. I'll say it's been a very reliable, very valuable plant for us. In addition to electricity, it provides local resource adequacy capacity, which is something that we have a requirement to purchase a certain amount of that every year, and we have a shortage of it from our portfolio, so we're always trying to buy more. So this facility provides some valuable RA, as well as Bucket 1 renewable energy credits, or RECs. And for that, the contract price, it started out at $52 per megawatt hour, escalating at 1.5% per year. So in a couple of years, the contract rate will be up to $67 per megawatt hour, which in the current market, that's quite a bargain. It's a great, it's been a great value to the city over the past 15 years. So about a year or so ago, Ameresco reached out to us as well as staff from Alameda and inquired about our interest in extending the contract because it's currently slated to end in 2029. And we, of course, said yes, we would love to do that. They also let us know that the landfill is producing more gas than the plant can consume currently. And so they have an opportunity to add some additional generators at the site and produce an additional 3 megawatts of output. So that's about a 30% increase in the current capacity of the facility. Under the amendment, again, we would receive half of that additional capacity, and Alameda would get the rest of it. The proposal from Ameresco would also extend the contract by 20 years from when the expansion capacity comes online. And that's expected to be 2 years from now in 2026. So that would effectively result in about a 17-year extension of the original contract, which currently ends in 2029. So in exchange for the additional capacity and the contract extension, Ameresco would like to see a slight price increase. As I mentioned, the contract price in 2026, when the capacity comes online, will be about $67. So they're proposing to bump that up to $74 per megawatt hour when that happens. However, in exchange, we will also get a slightly lower escalation factor on that contract rate. It'll go up by 1% per year, as opposed to 1.5% per year. Except in years like last year when there was high inflation, then the increase would be 2% per year, and then it would go back to 1% when inflation comes back down. And finally, one nuance is that I mentioned the current plant, 10.6 megawatts, that all qualifies as local resource adequacy capacity for us and for Alameda. The additional PET capacity, when it comes online, it's not guaranteed to qualify as RA capacity right away. Ameresco will have to go through a deliverability study process with the California Independent System Operator, the ISO, before that additional capacity qualifies as RA. Given the plant's reliability and its location here in the Bay Area, I'm pretty confident. I'm very confident that it will. It's just a question of how long until that gets done. So until that additional capacity qualifies as RA for us, we will get about a $1 discount on the contract price under the amended agreement. So those are the three main adjustments to the original contract that this amendment would provide for. Lastly, though, Ameresco asked for a termination right on the amendment itself. And the issue here is that we've kind of negotiated the amendment price down quite a bit, and it's down to the point now where Ameresco still has 2 years to go before the project is completed, and they still have to go through the process of securing their environmental permit from the county and their air quality permit from the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. And as they go through those processes, they may be required to make some investments to clean things up and make them a little bit safer for the public. And so the cost of those investments may push the total cost of the project high enough to be no longer economic for Ameresco. So they've kind of negotiated this termination right where if that's the case, if the project no longer makes economic sense for them, they could kind of pull the plug just on the amendment. The original contract would stay in place. And if we got into that situation, Amoresco would still want to extend the original contract, so they would come back to us and we'd have to enter negotiations on a standalone extension without the expansion portion. So staff did an economic assessment of the amendment. We found that the levelized price of the PPA over this 20-year extension term would be between $80 and $85 per megawatt hour, depending on the number of high inflation years. That works out to an average cost of about $5 million per year for Palo Alto. And as I mentioned, in exchange for that contract price, we receive kind of three different benefits from the project. We get, of course, the electricity, which is valuable to the grid. We also get bucket 1 RECs and local RA capacity. And so when you add up those three value streams, you get the total benefits of the project are expected to outweigh the total cost of the project by roughly $11 per megawatt hour. Obviously, this is a 20-year assessment here that we're talking about. So there's quite a bit of uncertainty around these values, but we feel pretty confident that this amendment will be a winner for the city. I'll just mention that current market prices for bucket 1 RECs and for local RA are vastly higher than the estimates that we've used here in this assessment. So these are, if anything, I think pretty conservative estimates of the value that we'll get from this amendment. In terms of the impact on our portfolio, this slide shows an annual look at the city's load and our resource supplies from 2025 to 2045. Kind of the resource supplies are broken down by type of resource. The amendment, the impact of the amendment is shown in the top of these stacked bars in kind of like a light brown striped area. For the first few years, the striped bars are pretty small because we're just showing the additional expansion capacity, the impact of the 3 megawatts of expansion capacity, and the original contract capacity, the original 10 megawatts is shown in the dark brown bars below. And then once we get to 2029, the dashed bars are showing the entire capacity of the plant, because that's when the original contract would be expiring. So you can see we have a bit of a surplus overall compared to our load for the midterm horizon period. And then we have deficits out in the future, and this would help cover some of those deficits. In terms of a monthly look at the portfolio, that's what this graph shows, the monthly load and resource supply mix in, this is the year 2030. So after the original contract would have expired. This project, like all of our landfill gas projects, it's a base load resource. It provides roughly the same amount of output every hour of the day and every month of the year, basically. It is not a dispatchable resource. As long as there's gas coming out of the landfill, the project runs and generates electricity. So it doesn't really help with our kind of mismatch between load and supply. It increases our surpluses a little bit in the summer and closes our deficits a little bit in the winter. In terms of our renewable energy portfolio, this graph shows renewable energy supplies from 2003 going forward, along with our RPS requirements in the dark gray line. You can see that currently we have a surplus of renewable energy supplies compared to our RPS requirement, and this amendment would increase those slightly. And then beyond 2036, we have a projected deficit, which this amendment would go a good ways towards closing those deficits up. And then finally, in terms of the cost of this amendment. As I mentioned earlier, the cost will be about $5 million a year for the city. So that's about $101 million for the 20-year extension term period. And then over the entire length of the contract, originally 20 years, now over 37 years, the authority amount that we're requesting would be $147.2 million, just to make sure we have enough to cover all the costs out through 2046 or whatever the contract will be expiring. And here's the recommendation. Staff strongly recommends approving this amendment and moving it forward to City Council in a couple of weeks. And that's the end of the slides. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Questions? Comments? Go ahead.
Jim, thank you for this presentation. I had a question about the termination right clause in the contract. Two questions, actually. One, have you considered simply pre-negotiating an extension in the absence of their ability to get the expansion permitted? Number one. And number two, you know, in the event that it is determined to be uneconomic, how exactly is that determined and enforced? Like, do
Yeah,
they
those are
say it doesn't, you know, it no longer makes sense under these terms, or is there a, are there prices put on expansion capacity, you know, permitting length period, et cetera, so that's already understood by the city in advance?
Yeah, those are good questions. Our attorneys raised the second question as well about what triggers the termination right. Are we just taking their word for it? And unfortunately, I think the answer is basically yes. There's really not any sort of, you know, objective criteria we could point to, you know, the price of steel or something like that, and have it all kind of hinging on that. And Ameresco certainly doesn't want to kind of open up their books and show us, you know, their pro forma, you know, what they assumed for all these costs and what their profit margin will end up being. So yeah, at the end of the day, we are sort of relying on them to make this call. You know, they do have every interest in making it go through. I think the most likely situation, if they get into a sticky situation where they feel it's not economic for them, they could come back to us and ask us to go for a, you know, a slight increase in the current amendment price that we've negotiated. And then we'll have to, you know, decide at that point whether to accept that their proposal, or just you know, extend the original contract.
And did you consider simply pre-negotiating the extended contract in the absence of expansion?
Not really. They were pretty focused on the expansion components, and they didn't want to have those discussions with us. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess I had the same thought as Commissioner Motter on having the default extension so that we don't have control over what they say about the add-on, but at least we have the comfort of knowing we have the time on this contract that we're interested in, if that's what we decide. And then thanks for doing the monthly load resource balance. I would even throw out in terms of if there's any concern on city council side about having surplus, I would almost flip this and put this as the base load or the base supply. And so when, I mean, even monthly, you know, you have these months where it looks like surplus, and so that should bring some comfort. But also if you flip it, because it's the most predictable, solar may change, and I think especially hydro. And so it might be more comforting if there's any concern about that.
Good point. Yep.
First of all, I think this is a great deal for the city of Palo Alto, for a number of reasons. Has the city of Alameda already agreed, or are they being offered the same terms and in negotiations, or what's the status as far as you know?
Yes, they were offered the same terms. We negotiated kind of as a team with Alameda.
I mean, part of what, I mean, I like this for a lot of reasons. I think it's great. It's economically great for the city. It's great for the environment. And I'd hate to have us kind of lose out if we don't take this expansion. I don't know if Alameda would take it or another party would come in. And then that dilutes our ability for future expansions. I don't see landfills as going away anytime soon. So I'm very strongly supported. It's great.
I love landfill gas too as a resource. Can you talk a little bit about how $74 per megawatt hour compares to some of our other PPAs and what we're paying for a megawatt hour and some of our other contracts?
Yeah, so I think 74 is a pretty attractive price. Honestly, we executed this agreement back in 2005. It was one of our earliest contracts. It was before kind of the big rush among all the utilities in California to start signing renewables deals before the RPS requirement was in place. So we got, I think, a pretty attractive price at the time. To get a base load contract in place today, you would probably be, you'd probably be looking closer to $95 to $100 per megawatt hour for a new resource. And as I mentioned, the price of RECs today alone is over $70 a megawatt hour in the current market, although it's expected to come down in a few years. And then this is pretty comparable to the price that we pay for most of our solar projects. Most of those are in the $70 range. Our most recent one was in the mid 30s. So, there's a pretty wide range in what we're paying for contracts. But this is one of the more attractive, baseload resources we have.
And what are we paying for our fairly new geothermal contract? Do you have that off the top of your head?
I believe $77.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my other question was, can you talk just a little bit about the anti-speculation requirement of Section D1 of the city's energy risk management policy, which we propose to waive here?
Yeah, so this is this requirement, the anti-speculation requirement, is designed to prevent us from, purchasing things that we know we are not going to need in the future in order to kind of sell them and make a profit. But given, the huge amount of variation we have in our supply portfolio due to the hydroelectric variability and due to climate change impacts and so forth, we're recommending, kind of waiving that requirement, because in most years this will not be, or in many years this will not be, surplus to our needs. This will be a core part of meeting our needs, and it'll also help us, of course, we have a need for the renewable energy for meeting our RPS requirements. So for those two reasons, we're recommending waiving that requirement.
Would it be safe to say, given the annual graph that you had up earlier, that sort of any resource we enter into a contract now would require a waiver because we're just over in summer? Or is not that done?
Yes, I think that would probably be the case, unless it was a contract that only delivered in the winter months, or only
If somebody's
started
got a
delivering in
resource that delivers in winter and not in summer.
Yeah, we're still looking
I'm
for
sure
it.
we're interested. Okay. Yeah.
Don't hold back.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right. Yeah, I also am very strongly supportive of this. It seems like a really good deal for the utilities. We ready to vote? All right, start down there.
Yeah, I move we support the recommendation.
I
Okay,
second.
all in favor?
I'm in favor.
In favor?
In favor? In favor.
I also vote yes.
Great job.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
All right, now I think we're on to the work plan. All right, let's continue on. That's what I'm thinking. Does anyone want to take a break now, or you want to take a break after this?
Keep going. Oh, I'm sorry.
Beautiful. If you want to take a break, we can take a break.
I'm not going to make a small break.
Okay, all right.
Take one, right, though?
Well, after this item, we'll adjourn and take a break. I'm happy to take a break if you need to. Let's go forward.
Okay.
I'll ask for public comments.
Do we have any public comments?
This is Janelle Camion, Program Assistant. If anyone from the public would like to speak on item number 6, please raise your hand or dial *9 on your phone. No hands raised.
All right. If we have a staff presentation,
We do not have a staff presentation. This item was basically to have a conversation and to move this work plan forward or any of the edits that you may have as a commission. As you know, this was established back in 2020 that the boards and commission should strongly have work plans. So these work plans were advised by looking at last year's of some of the work plans that were not achieved. And so the idea was to have a conversation with the commission to find out if these are the work plans that you all would like to see, or if there's any additions, and we can answer any of your questions of the work plan itself.
okay. So what you'd like us to do is to basically go through each commissioner and see if they have any comments or changes to the work plan, correct?
That is correct. And then once that's adopted, then we would move it on to council.
So I'll just give you my 2 cents to start with on a work plan. My view of these work plans is they should be as broad and flexible as possible so that the UAC can take up any matter that it comes up during the course that they may want to. So rather than mandating stuff for us more on a micro level, I look more to see if we can have a broad scope. So if one of our commissioners comes up with something, or a member of the public comes up with something, like we had a speaker today about the ADUs. That's not something I would put in the work plan, but it might be something we want to take up and get questions on. So that's really the way I look at this is there anything we might want to take up that this work plan would not allow us to take up? And if so, we should add it in, as opposed to removing anything, for instance. So I don't know if anyone has any comments on particular items or wants to go forward, or if you just want to adopt it and go home. No, go ahead.
I have one request and one question. The Commissioner Motter's first name is spelled incorrectly. If it's possible to correct that, that would be fantastic. My second question, and the much more important one, I think relates to the ongoing relationship between the UAC and SCAP. I feel like that has become, I wouldn't say more muddled over time, but I think that clear responsibilities, authorities, a racy table. So like who's responsible, who has decision-making authority, who's consulted and who's informed as these efforts get underway would be very conducive to helping SCAP and the UAC collaborate more effectively and also more effectively work with council to move some of these actions forward. And so that is not necessarily, I think it is important in this work plan insofar as SCAP is represented both in standing topic number 6 and in standing topic number 9, which sort of, overlap each other, but also somewhat conflict with one another. Standing topic number 6, somewhat implying a very strong leadership role for the UAC. Number 9, somewhat implying a support role to SCAP. And again, I don't need to resolve that here and now. In fact, I really request that we do not do that. But I do think that a stronger RACI table would more effectively facilitate collaboration. I guess my request is that if we could come back with that in a future staff report, I think that that would be one way to act on it.
Yes, I mean, I think that, we could probably define the roles better in this. I think that some of this is muddied because of the utilities as a whole and council being on the ad hoc committee. And then, we're not really represented at that ad hoc committee at all from a UAC perspective. And then, I think that as these programs continue to move forward, where we are looking at as this resiliency and reliability piece, we are funding and we are supporting 100% of that. And that is a utilities perspective on that, which we will take upon ourselves to give updates as this gets collected. That item actually goes to council here later the month of April. My thought was that, we would bring back what those recommendations are from the council standpoint, but moving forward, there could be more muddy waters as we move forward, as we go to whole home, or we're going to go to, I think the lines are set for grid mod, and I think for fiber as those projects move forward. And I also think that EVs are, but building electrification, I'm not sure where that falls at this point. So maybe what we need to do, like I said, we need to really, and I can have a conversation with Mr. Abishine and staff to talk a little bit more about how do we define how these roles are going to be moved forward and include those back into this work plan. And then what we can do is we can bring the work plan with any of your other edits that we can talk about tonight. And then see what your thoughts are.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure it needs to be in a work plan because I agree with Commissioner Scharf that this should simply be as broad as possible so that we can address things. But I guess I would say really clearly articulating roles, responsibilities, accountabilities, and authorities, or a RACI table for specific tasks, I think would just clarify the types of things that we might take up underneath this existing work plan.
I guess the only concern that I would have would be is that I understand Chair Scharf's understanding about being wide and flexible. But I think though that what I've heard from this group is that there needs to be some better definition on SCAP as a whole. So I think in this SCAP, it may not be as wide, and because the question is, where does the commission fit in on whole home electrification? I don't know, and it could be that maybe it's just in the work plan that says these bullet items will be brought to the commission and we could talk about it. So if I could suggest that, I don't know, I think it would get lost in a staff report. Because I think the thing is that what will happen is council will see these and they will adopt them. When they see these and adopt them, then it's on record that, here's what the function and responsibilities are for this commission to be looking at for the future as we move forward in electrification or any of the SCAP goals that the council has set. So I think my preference would be is that, again, keeping it broad, but maybe it's to look at listing of what those items are and leave it at that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And do we have that enough in the existing plan? I mean, do you think we need to add stuff? Do you think we need to add stuff in the existing plan that puts it on record that we have responsibility for these things? Is that, I mean, that's versus the SCAP. I'm totally good with that.
I think that maybe, you know, as Vice Chair Mater mentioned, you know, I think that, you know, as we put in here, just under the benefit, benefit pack, benefits are is that UAC will help council. I'm not sure if that's really what, I think maybe we take a role, a stronger role. So leaving it broad and then in these areas and then list the areas. And then at that point, we could take anything up from a budget standpoint or for a policy perspective or, you know, whatever needs to be taken to from this commission to support or not support at that point as we move forward to council.
So are you thinking we'll make those changes tonight on this? Or are you thinking staff will come back?
No, I think that if we will take our notes as best as we can between the three of us, and then what we'll do is we'll go back and listen to this, of course, too. And so we'll catch all our comments and then we'll make these changes and then bring it back.
Do you want to elaborate on on the SCAP stuff that we should put in there to give ourselves clear direction on that?
Yeah, so I don't know the full plan for SCAP over the next year. I do think that Commissioner Metz has been trying to help play a communication role between the two committees, but I would defer to his input and actually ask for his consultation on that revised plan. One thing that I did want to make sure was represented is that I see a strong adaptation mandate that falls squarely under the UAC's purview that often gets lost in our discussions of SCAP, which are more focused on mitigation. And so elevating the adaptation component in our discussions over the next year, whether that is in response to impacts on water supply, impacts on wastewater, impacts on, wildfire risk, et cetera. I think that falls squarely in how we end up both operating utilities and maintaining utilities and is certainly not in the purview of SCAP. Or cannot adequately be covered through SCAP alone.
Totally agree with that statement.
Would it be worth adding an item that is climate adaptation as it affects utility infrastructure or something like that? Or is that too specific?
I felt like that was actually represented in standing topic 6, which was the reliability and resiliency piece, but it didn't fully call out adaptation, and it did call out SCAP, and so that's where I was confused. I think it's covered in 6. So I wouldn't mind the explicit term adaptation because I think it helps clarify what we mean.
Okay, go ahead.
I just had a couple little ones that were sort of on the vein of giving a little more flexibility. So I can go through them real quickly. Standing topic 1 on the timeline, I would just throw in typically for the dates rather than having it be a failure if you're off a day or two. On standing topic 3 for the measure of success, I would like it to be maintaining or expanding the zero emissions portion of the portfolio. And I was also struggling, but I don't know where I come out on the measure of success for 4, whether 10% is the right percent for PG&E, but maybe That's just
So
to,
what is our historical? Isn't it more like 20? Dean, what's our historical on PG&E? Isn't it more like 20? 20?
Yeah, it's right around 20.
So shouldn't it say 20 in here rather than 10?
or at least 10 or something. I don't know.
I mean, 10 seems to be a failure if we're historically at 20.
Well,
I mean, to be honest, you
Right.
know.
Another spike like we had last year.
I think that when we looked at this is that, we're competitive in definitely in the summer rates. Our summer rates are lower, but the winter rates, we creep up and in our commercial rate portions, we're actually higher.
Okay.
So we took and looked at what that average is. I mean, of course, we can put this down for the success that if we averaged 15%, 20%, if you think that 10 is, too high. We want a true stretch goal for what we can do.
I guess I wasn't looking for a stretch goal. I was just looking for the historical
For the STAR goal?
of what we actually do. I mean, I don't want us to get, I think we should try and maintain the historical average that we've had with PG&E. I mean, there may be reasons why the world changes, but
Right.
I don't quite see clapping ourselves in the back if historically we've been at 20 and now we're like, yes, we're at 10.
Okay.
A couple others of those on standing topic 5, I think for the measure of success, it should be within the timeline and budget that was approved by council. And also in standing topic 6, to throw in high level of efficient, safe, economic, and reliable, since that is part of the mandate. And then let's see, topic 2 for FY 2025, measure of success also and on or below budget. And then the most important of all, page 74 on topic 5 for FY 2025, reduces the use of, and then just needs an L for natural before gas, in case anyone was confused. And there you go. That's my
Sorry,
turn.
last. Chair Siegel, I missed that one. So page 74.
Oh, for the natural? Oh, just in the upper left box where it says beneficial impacts,
Lower the risk.
reduces the use of natural gas. Packet page 75,
Got it.
yeah.
Can I actually, I'm sorry, I forgot on sitting topic number 6. I think the measure of success is efficient, safe, affordable, and reliable services, period. Utility services broadly. And then we could say that a second measure of success is to pilot, run a pilot program for converting homes to electric. But I think these are very distinct things. And I think that we absolutely have a mandate to start looking for ways in which climate will affect utilities operation. And I don't think that we assume a lot of status quo in our forecasts necessarily, right? I don't think we are adequately projecting risks of future climate on long-term utility operation. And that's something that I think would be a true hallmark of success for our council over the next, I won't be unrealistic and say the next year, but I think in the next 5 years, we need to be taking that mandate very seriously.
I actually agree with that. I'm not sure that's a measure of success, really.
Yeah.
It's, it's almost like it's a part of the standing topics, right?
Yeah, okay. I mean, we could break it out. I just like the the focus on like home electrification actually feels like a poor fit in this area, this broad area.
So I, I think the thing is in this, well, the intention, I think that when we were talking about this portion of it was that this is all about gas hedging and having a strategy.
In topic 6 is about gas hedging.
Well, am I on the wrong page? 74?
Oh, no, new one.
Oh, a new one.
Standing topic 6.
Oh,
69. It's about gas hedging. I missed the vote badly.
oh, standing topic. Okay. I'm with you now. That makes sense.
It's almost like resiliency, reliancy, and adaptation should be the topic at the top level.
May I make a suggestion? What's on the screen now where the cursor is, could we just put a period and delete the rest? Because I think the heat pump water heater program is mentioned elsewhere, so I think we just don't need it here.
I agree.
I agree too.
Sounds good.
And I just think as a structural document, the standing topics are sort of big level, and then the programs are sort of in the 2025 section.
Chair Sharp,
Yes,
are you accepting motions at this time?
yes, I'm accepting a motion.
I would like to move that we accept the work plan as amended during the course of this topic.
We have a second? All right, second it. We ready to vote?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
For a RACI table that might be in the future appended to a work plan, could we still approve tonight's work plan and then simply have an amendment?
And then we'll bring it back.
Perfect, but I think we should approve this as it is.
Right.
And move forward.
Okay. How do you vote, Chair?
Just to be clear, though, the motion was for the wordsmithing we've done that's captured. Okay, perfect.
Yep.
I approve.
I approve.
Yes.
Approve.
And I also approve. All right, and that brings us to, let's see, the commission comments and reports from meetings. Anyone have any?
I actually do.
Okay.
So I went to this, the power conference at Berkeley. It was actually quite interesting. A couple things that I found relevant. They looked at, well, one of the ones was contractor learning and heat pump installation. They found that the learning takes place at the firm level, and they do get better, but very slowly over time. This was mostly focused on heat pump home heating. What I found interesting is they had one of the discussants was actually an electrician. And I did not know this, but it takes 8,000 hours of training to become an authorized electrician. But each authorized electrician can only have one trainee working for them at a time, according to California state law. And at least according to this guy, this is a huge bottleneck in getting electricians. It does keep the pay of electricians very high. So I think some in the academic audience were looking at a potential switch of career, but it's also a huge bottleneck to, moving forward with some of these programs. As much as we'd like to mandate the heat pumps being installed, I can see not just on the supply chain side. They also had a very cool, they were able to do an experimental design in Canada, where I guess people are more amenable to these types of things. In Alberta, they assigned about 210 people who had EVs into 3 groups. One of them, they monitored their behavior on charging. The second one, they gave a 3.5 cent per kilowatt hour reward for off-peak charging at home. And then the third one, they actually managed. So they had an optimization program that managed when they did it. The finding was that in terms of the time of use, people changed their behavior so much that it created a peaking problem. They'd look at against, hypothetical transformers. And again, they were doing a single time of use tier, that the peaking time then moved to later in the evening. I forget what it was, 9 o'clock. They suddenly had a huge spike, which just moved the spike that they had at 6 o'clock. Again, these are 100% households with EVs, so it doesn't necessarily extrapolate, but certainly as we see EV penetration, it's something to keep in mind. So I have the slides from those two if anybody's interested, maybe Janelle or I'll send them to you and you can distribute them or ask that. So it was actually really a worthwhile use of time.
Sounds interesting. Anybody else? Nope. Go ahead.
Not so much about a meeting, but just since this is likely my last meeting, I just wanted to express my gratitude for being able to be part of the Utility Advisory Commission. I'm regularly impressed by the quality of the staff that we have here, and every customer should appreciate the quality of their utility providers and the great commissioners that I've had the pleasure of working with. And we're really in good hands here in the city. And talk to your friends at PG&E and it'll make you feel good. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I definitely think we're going to miss both of you a lot.
If I may also similarly just express my gratitude to staff and the other commissioners, as well as to the thoughtful public that often speaks at our meetings. It's been a really an honor and a pleasure to serve as commissioner, and I'll be watching on video going forward.
Do we know if they're going to have new commissioners appointed within the next month?
We don't.
And if not,
Despite our speeches, you might see us one more time.
Yeah,
I'm saying we might see you one
I
more
think we're
time.
covering our bases in case they've brought on new commissioners by May.
Exactly.
All these great
Yep,
sentiments you might.
that's right.
All right. I think we have one other thing as future topics. If anyone has any, wants to discuss it.
I actually think the public comment today, I don't know what the topic is, if it's part of permitting or what, but separating ADUs on their own meter is something worth, I think, coming to the UAC in the future.
I would agree with that, Dean. I mean, I don't know if it's Jonathan Lade or who, but maybe we could have a discussion of why.
I think that it starts with the utility side as, so in our rules and reg, we only allow one set of services to any partial. And this topic has come up in the past with other customers about building a ADU and wanting to have really splitting out the electric and the water services out of that. We need to have some more conversations from a staff perspective and talk to Jonathan's group from a permitting perspective.
Well, let's put
So-
that on
so
here
I
as
will-
a list and,
Yeah.
and when you guys can come forward with, that you're either recommending you change it, or if you're not recommending you change it, why not?
Right, we can do that.
Yeah, I even though you probably won't have it by next month, so I'll probably never just be part of that discussion. I just wanted to chime in. I do think it's a really compelling topic, especially John Kelly, who spoke, is a neighbor of mine, and, you know, and they'd like to provide an electric vehicle charger, like trying to do all the right things that the city is asking. Install an electric vehicle charger to go with the ADU, you know, and so it's really something that does need to be separately metered for that to even make sense. So it would be great to see the city make progress on that.
Well, also it comports with our housing goals, because if you really want people to rent the ADUs out, it's a little weird not to let them pay for their own utilities. All right, any other topics? All right then, if anyone doesn't object, we're adjourning.